So one of the things I do all the time to decorate up my learning content is to use Bootstrap interface elements. But I got frustrated with the amount of time I was spending to write those each time I wanted to include them in my content. So in order to speed that up, speed myself up, I've written a Sublime Text plugin to automate the creation of these interface elements. So for example, and I'll work quickly in this first example, if I wanted to convert this content here into an accordion, all I need to do in my Sublime Text editor, Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P if you're on a Windows machine, and start typing in build Bootstrap, you'll see all of these different interface element types. So the first one I want to try is the accordion, and what you see on the left-hand side is an accordion. Now, as I do this now more slowly with our next menu, let's look at how the decision-making happens. Basically, you'll see in this HTML that anywhere I want a new, in this case I'm building vertical tabs, anywhere I want a new tab, I simply put a heading 5. And then any amount of content below that, and the content can be anything, in this case it's just Lorem Ipsum text, but it could be, paragraphs with headings and tables and a whole lot of other stuff. It doesn't matter the volume of content, it will basically read all of that until it comes up to the next heading 5, and then it will start the next tab and so it goes. So let's go. I'm choosing this material here, Command-Shift-P, and I'm choosing the vertical tabs option. And you can see that there. Right, let me go now to do this horizontal tabs. There's no mystery anymore. I'm just going to move quite quickly through these next ones. There's our horizontal tabs. Show hide interface, which is another thing I use quite a lot. The way that this works is you can have some visible content shown here, and then from the heading 5 down below is the material they want to be hidden. And so I select that content, Command-Shift-P, and choose the show option, and you'll see that it's done that there. And the text that is the button came from the heading 5 that I had previously selected. So if you're careful with the naming of your headings, you can also rapidly create meaningfully labeled buttons. All right, let's keep going. Cards. Cards are another thing which I use all the time. Cards are great ways to lay out content. They're fully responsive, so the layout will adapt with the device. And let me choose this first option, which is the most vanilla of all of the card layouts. It's simply called cards. And this will effectively, it looks a little bit like a table, doesn't it? It's basically got the cards all touching up against each other. There's no margin between them. That's fine. I prefer this next look myself, which is one called deck. And it's exactly the same. The only difference here is that there's some margin between the cards. And I think that white space helps in readability, just makes it look a little bit more attractive. And then we can go on and get more creative still. So if we choose this option here, and in this case, I'm going to choose the one called rainbow. And then we have, it's sort of a rainbow coloured set of cards. Now you'll notice that I've been a little deliberate here. Each one of these headings says up to 3. I find that any more than 3 cards are organised into columns across the screen, it gets a little congested. And what ends up happening is that the contents of each card gets very squished up, and you have to scroll up and down quite a lot to view the content of any one card. So I put an upper limit of 3 columns, and anything more than 3 cards, it will arrange it in a different layout, a layout called columns, which I quite like. I'm going to choose this, and I can choose the rainbow again. So I want these 8 items to be rainbow coloured, and there they are there. But what it's done is to lay them out into a columnar view. So you'll see now they read down the screen, 1, 2, 3, and then it spills into the next column, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you'll notice that the layout sort of adapts based on the size and volume of the contents of each card. So it's more sort of tessellated or a masonry style. It's actually quite nice because, again, if you've got too much content in one card versus another, the layout can look a bit wonky when they're laid out adjacent to each other, but this columns view sort of adjusts for that. So before I go any further, let me just make sure that this is all working. I better save this and test that my interfaces actually do what they say they're going to do. And so you can see that all of the menus work as you would expect them to. Show hide also works. And you can see the layouts here. And I think it becomes a bit more evident what I was talking about when you have too much content in too many cards. It does, or even now, start to get squashed up because, of course, when you're in Moodle at least, you've got this left-hand navigation as well to contend with. So anything more than 3 would just be a bit sort of wonky. And here we have our columnar view. Now, one of the things that if you spend any time in Bootstrap, you might know, and it's a bit more technical, is that if you've got more than one interface element on the screen, you can sometimes have some problems. I've created before, if I've got 2 accordions on the one screen, for instance, you can click on the button of one and it actually opens a different accordion on the same screen. You've got to be really cautious that each hyperlink, each anchor is unique. And so that's been accommodated for in the coding of this Sublime Text plugin. So I'm just going to open this one more time so that we can see that. In fact, I can just more easily demonstrate on the left-hand side. If we go back to, this is our first accordion, so it matches the content here. Basically, for each set of interface elements, I create a unique ID. This is a unique ID that is for this specific accordion. And you'll notice that everything within that accordion references that same unique ID. And so the heading one that's here would be completely different than any other heading anywhere else on the page. You could have a number of accordions below each other and it wouldn't be a problem because each one gets a unique ID. That unique ID is used wherever it matters. And then when you create the second accordion, it's got a different ID. And so everything just works. The other thing, and this is just, I think, a way of keeping our code fairly straight, is that I deliberately open and close each new interface element with a comment. That comment includes the name of the thing. This is an accordion, its unique ID, and the date that it was added. The date I've just added because sometimes it's nice to be able to look back at your code, 6 months later and try and get some history to that. So if I scroll down to my next interface elements, this is the vertical tabs, you'll see that this has got a different ID. Of course, it says start of vertical tabs and the date and time for that. And you can follow that down to when that is closed. So it just makes the code, I think, more readable. And as we go through, you'll see that pattern again and again. So really, it's already proving to be a really time saver for me. I think it will be for you as well. I'll be putting a link to the Github repository that houses this Sublime Text plugin. That will be in the video description. And I'll work with you on how to get that installed into your Sublime Text.